It's Borosh, and I'm back with another video. I'm going to explain a couple of trends and transpositions regarding the game Hans Niemann versus Levon Aronian from the Julius Bar event. So, really, what caught my attention is this play by Hans, this play of bishop d3, g6, f3, bishop g7, and bishop from d3 to e2, which is actually a move that feels strange, but that's one of those things that I want to explain. This has been the recent trends of late, that there are plenty of bishop stutters in these openings. But for that, I have to show you a couple of games and ideas that have happened recently. So this opening is, of course, the Najdorf Sicilian. Bishop d3 has been a recent kind of play and have been played multiple times, but actually hasn't been the biggest trend of 2019, 2021. In fact, there was a different way of playing. Bishop d3, g6, f3, bishop g7, bishop e2. f3 by in itself is sort of a newer way of playing, because white is saying, well, I wasted time. Usually the bishop does not land on d3. The bishop usually either stays back on f1 or it goes to c4 straight and bishop b3. And bishop g7, usually white goes bishop to e3, queen d2, long castles, and you get sort of a dragon Sicilian with the extra move of pawn to a6 and bishop to d3. But this is the moment I want to get back to you and the trends and transpositions, and I'm going to explain why I think that may matter. So d6, bishop b5 check. This has been actually the latest trend. So they've been, of course, d4 plays, but bishop b5 check has been very popular and in fact been played by Hans Niemann himself before. The bishop b5 check, knight d7, a4, a6, bishop e2. So you're noticing there's a lot of stutter going on with the bishop. You move out the bishop, usually the basic dogma we had in chess, if you move out your bishop, it should have a purpose and you should capture on d7. And in the game that I'm mentioning here is between Burkic and a player named Markus Löffler. So bishop b5 to bishop e2, knight f6, knight c3, e5, and surprise, surprise, bishop to c4. So nonetheless, white played the move bishop to b5, 1, then back to e2, 2, and then bishop to c4, and went on to win a game that was pretty nice. I'm not going to get into the details. All you need to know that white actually went on to play d3, bishop b7, d3, castles, castles, b6, and went on to break through with an eventual knight move and f4, breaking on and basically pressing on the f7 pawn. But really the basic premise of this is that moving your bishop multiple times has been sort of the trend. So bishop b5, knight d7, a4, a6, bishop e2. So the bishop moves back from b5, e2, and then to c4, ending up wasting plenty of time and basically arguing that the knight on d7 is not ideally placed, and black might have to waste time himself, herself, if they want a better position. But this is not the only thing I want to mention, because there was another important game and was played in 2021 between Elyanov and Brkic. And again, let's go back to this position between Hans and Levon Aronian, where Hans played the move bishop to e2. And you might be thinking, oh, bishop e2, very strange decision. What is the bishop doing there? But you will see that in this next game that I'm going to plug on in, this idea actually pops up. And again, with plenty of bishop moves. All right, so let me plug that right in. And by the way, if you're not familiar with this game between Hans Niemann and Levon, knight d7 followed bishop e3, queen d2, or normal g4, which is sort of a unique approach. This I haven't seen myself, but bishop e2 actually have been an idea, and I'm going to pinpoint that in a minute. Knight e5, g5, b3, basically restricting the knight. e6, f, rook c8, knight b5, runs into this tactical trick. Here takes, queen b4, queen e2 and knight f5 with queen e7, checkmate to follow. That is to follow over there, so here Levon resigned. Let me pull up that game. Yes. Yep. So this is the game between Pavel Elyanov, who is, of course, a top player and, of course, part of the Ukrainian national team, and Ante Brikic. Here, bishop b5 check. And you may be wondering why I mentioned this game. Well, there is such a thing called recency effect. So knight d7, d4, takes, here, bishop d3. Again, a little bit of a stutter step. Bishop goes to b5, then goes back. So here takes, bishop d3. Bishop hops back over there to this square. Knight c5, knight c3, g6, f3, bishop g7. I'm not sure what's happening. Let's refresh. Okay, that did not work, but let's see if it's going to work this time. All right, it works. Perfect. So here, bishop d3, knight c3, g6, bishop e3, castles, bishop e2. So again, the bishop moves from b5 to d3, and then it goes to e2, which is something very unusual. This hasn't been the trend before, but let me remind you, this is a game from 2021. So this idea of the bishop going from d3 to e2 is nothing new, and even though quite strange for some people who haven't been in the chess circles, have been going and getting popular. Now, you might be asking, well, why is this knight on c5? Obviously, that knight wanted to capture that bishop, but could have captured earlier, and why he didn't do it, I do not know. But on the other hand, now you could argue, well, that's the reason Elyanov played bishop d3 to e2 to avoid being captured. However, there is something called recency effect that I mentioned earlier on. So recency effect says, and that is actually an important thing to remember, is that oftentimes we choose to play moves, or we choose to remember stuff that happened recently. So with Hans actually been playing these bishop b5 check lines, may have thought, well, this looks very similar to the games I looked at, so what about playing bishop d3 to e2? And that could be a spur of the moment / preparation. That is something, of course, I'm not sure of. It could be either or. But it is pretty apparent that he could have been in the know of this idea of moving or stuttering with this bishop and then play chess that way. Now, that position, of course, is different. Levon's knight isn't on c5 in that case, but that doesn't mean he couldn't recall this idea of bishop d3 to e2. The game continued. Bishop d7, queen a5, a4, a6, castles, rook c8, rook b1, and etc. Elyanov went on to win a long positional game. So all I wanted to show you all in this video that there are plenty of transpositions, and it is possible that he actually managed to recall this idea from the bishop b5 check Sicilian and used it in his Najdorf game against Levon Aronian. So I'm very curious what you all think. Do you think that's possible? Do you think that's the case? Or do you think that is by no means a possibility? I'm very curious. Definitely let me know in the comments. I am going to link up this game and the other games I mentioned. So thank you so much for watching and hope you enjoyed this breakdown.